Om. 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Well, good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. It's May the 2nd already. It hardly seems possible. So that means that it being May, that it's time for the annual meeting of our congregation, which will be held by Zoom again this year on Sunday, May 16th, beginning at 11 a.m. You will hear reports from our trustees, the board's committee chairs, and your resident minister. You can also help elect next year's Board of Trustees. Please mark your calendar for this, our first face-to-face meeting as a congregation will be on Sunday, July 4th. We should all be fully vaccinated by then, and those of us who are fully vaccinated will be most welcome at that gathering. To prepare for that, there will be 2 Seva Saturdays in June, the 19th and the 26th. To get your center, outside and inside, ready to receive our congregation in style on July 4th. For these 2 days and the 4th, those members who have been fully vaccinated will be welcome. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Seva Saturday is a 4-hour period on Saturday, starting at 10 a.m. in the morning and ending at 2 nominally. Oftentimes, some people do stay after, but nominally it ends at 2 o'clock. You absolutely do not have to pledge the whole 4 hours or come for the whole 4 hours. Any time you can spare at all will be most gratefully received. Starting at 10 a.m., there is a list prepared where the tea is served. You'll find the list, and you come and self-select what you would like to work on, outside or inside. And if you're here at noontime or lunchtime, which we define as 12:30, then you will be served a nice lunch, a light lunch, but an adequate lunch, usually from a pizza parlor or something like that, where we can get something good, something fun, and something, of course, vegetarian. So that's Seva Saturday. And we have people here to help instruct you if you're not familiar with the particular task that you would like to do. There will be instruction available. So are there any questions or comments, or are there some announcements that I should have made that were not made? All right. Again, welcome to all of you to our Sunday talk. Last month, we studied Jnana Yoga, which is understood to be, Advaita Vedanta or Jnana Yoga is understood to be the most difficult path of the four yogas. It's a relatively fast path for those who have the ability to actually live as a Jnana yogi. And you can look at the talks that were given last month to see what that means. Most people are really not willing to live as a Jnana yogi. So this month, we go from the most difficult path, Jnana Yoga, to what is said to be the easiest path. It's a slower path. It is, however, very certain, and for those to whom it is appropriate, a very satisfying and gratifying path, one that can be lived by virtually anyone. The path, of course, is Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion. May will be a month for the study of Bhakti Yoga. A Bhakti yogi, a Bhakta, has a devotional relationship with God. This is developed over time by study, prayer, ritual, and worship. As a Bhakta, you practice giving every action, thought, emotion, perception, and tendency a Godward turn. Everything you are, both positive and negative, is offered to the divine presence. Your prayer is for the carefree self-surrender of a child in its mother or father's arms. And finally, union with your beloved. In that state, no barrier of ego remains. The devotee becomes one with the divine presence in all-embracing love. As Chaitanya says in his prayer, O thou who stealest the hearts of thy devotees, do with me what thou wilt, for thou art my heart's beloved, thou and thou alone. Thou art my heart's beloved, thou and thou alone. And we'll come to see what is meant by the thou, that is the heart's beloved, and how it can be all-encompassing in that way. We'll start with this song for the month of May. This is called Bhakta's Prayer. O Lord, take my hand. O Lord, take my hand. Without thee I may fall. Without thee I may fall. O Lord, lead me on. O Lord, lead me on. Without thee I may stray. Without thee I may stray. O Lord, take my hand. O Lord, lead me on. Without thee I may fall. Without thee I may stray. O Lord, draw me near. O Lord, draw me near. Thou art my all in all. Thou art my all in all. Without thee I may fall. O Lord, take my hand. O Lord, lead me on. O Lord, draw me near. Thou art my all in all. Thou art my all in all. Without thee I may fall. O Lord, fill this heart. O Lord, fill this heart. O Lord, fill this heart. Thou art my all in all. Thou art my all in all. Without thee I may fall. O Lord, take my hand. O Lord, lead me on. O Lord, draw me near. O Lord, fill this heart. Thou art my all in all. Thou art my all in all. Without thee I may fall. Om. Amen. So the topic today is the Bhakta's method of meditation. The a Bhakta is one following the Bhakti Yogi, the Bhakti path, a Bhakti Yogi. Now, I'd like to say, as is often said, this is not meant as personal instruction, something that you should do. It's not my place to tell you what you should do. You should decide for yourself what you should do. You, and if you have a guru, you and your guru will decide. But this is a presentation of the way the Bhakta does this. And you take from it what delights you, what charms you, what you find practical, what you find useful in your life, if anything at all. You're not expected to believe this. You're not expected to take this as personal instruction. It is simply a presentation of the Bhakta's, the devotees' method of meditation. In the course of this, we'll define meditation according to the Bhakti path, and what a Bhakti is, what Bhakti Yoga is, and you'll come to some understanding of the word Bhakta. Swami Prabhavananda, from his instructions on meditation, said this, and this is the heart and soul of the Bhakta's way of being, ultimately. The Swami said, the chosen ideal, that aspect of the divine presence, with form, without form, defined, undefined, the God of your understanding, the chosen ideal is you yourself, no different. Learn to feel that living presence. That's the Swami's first instruction for meditation. Swami was my teacher, my guru. The chosen ideal is you yourself, no different. Learn to feel that living presence. That living presence is at the core of your being, according to the Bhakta's understanding. And as we learn to feel that living presence, certain things happen. These will be explained. Here's a paraphrase. The full quote will be read later, but here's a paraphrase from Father Richard Rohr. He's a Catholic mystic. He has an institute in Albuquerque, New Mexico. His last name is spelled R-O-H-R, Richard Rohr. Well worth your time if you choose to look into what he has to offer, which is published online, and it's free. Meditation, this is from Rohr. Meditation is not primarily saying words or thinking thoughts. It is rather a way of being, a way of living in the presence, living in the awareness of the presence, and even of enjoying the presence. The devotee is not just aware of God's loving presence, but trusts, allows, and delights in it. The devotee is not just aware of God's loving presence, but trusts, allows, and delights in it. And that's what Swami Prabhupada meant when he said, become aware of that living presence. Know that living presence. Bhakti Yoga is the devotional, that is, heart-centered path to God or self-realization. One who follows this path is a lover of God, a bhakta or devotee. Sri Ramakrishna said, you should remember that the heart of the devotee is the abode of God. He dwells, no doubt, in all beings, but he especially manifests himself in the heart of the devotee. The heart of the devotee is the drawing room of God. Bhaktas accept all the states of consciousness, waking, dreaming, and dreamless sleep. They say that the universe is a manifestation of God's power and glory. He is within us, in our hearts. Again, he is outside. Do you know how a lover of God feels? His attitude is, O God, thou art the master, and I am thy servant. Thou art the mother, and I am thy child. Or again, thou art my mother and father. Thou art the whole, and I am a part. That's from chapter 5 of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Typically, a bhakta's method of meditation will center on one of these relationships to God. The attitude of a servant, the attitude of a child, or perhaps that of a child who serves as a servant to the mother and father, as is told in that wonderful story that's given by Swami Vivekananda in his book Karma Yoga, about attaining full realization through simply serving one's parents, one's loved ones. But one can also just think of oneself as a child, or one can think of oneself as the mother or father of the divine, as Yashoda did toward Krishna. And we find this in the stories of Krishna in Vrindavan. But typically, a bhakta's method of meditation will center on one of these relationships, bhavas, attitudes toward God. If you feel you are the servant of the divine, particularly if you feel that you are a child of the divine serving that child's parents, it's very easy to have a loving and intimate relationship with the divine presence. And of course, that's very much to be wished. This morning, we'll explore how this heartfelt relationship begins and how, through meditation and other spiritual practices, it becomes a deeply God-centered way of life. A God-centered way of life. So we'll discuss this in 4 parts: the beginning, finding reverence. Next, your personally relevant context, your personally appropriate context and instruction for that. In other words, the attitude you're taking toward the divine, that aspect of the divine you're taking that attitude toward, and so on. Then becoming established. Long, patient practice. I said 4, actually, there are 5 points. As you progress in meditation, you sink into silence, you sink below the level of sense awareness and all of the thoughts and emotions and so on associated with that, and into a deeper level of yourself that you experience as silence, but it's a silence that is full of a different kind of being and relationship, and, if you will, thoughts and emotions. And throughout your journey, transformation. You change. You change because what you know changes. As Swami Swahananda, my second teacher, the Swami who sent me here, said often, the only true measure of spiritual progress is change in behavior. So throughout your journey, you will change. So before we go ahead with the specifics of all this, are there any questions or comments about what's been said so far, so that we get any doubts or questions, or something that you'd like to share from your own experience about this with the congregation? Anything at all from anyone?
Shankara.
Yes, Uma.
Hello. You started out with 4 attitudes to God, to worship God. And I think 2 are left out. One is that of friendship or lover, being a lover of God or friend of love, friend of God. And the other is, what is that?
Shantabhava.
Shanta of friendship, and fourth one I cannot come up.
No, Shantabhava. I left out the Shantabhava and the Madhura Bhava quite intentionally.
Yes.
The Shantabhava is not a devotee's way of being. It's a karma yogi's way of being, or for that matter, a jnani's way of being.
Uh-huh.
Madhura Bhava
Yes.
Depends on, it's something that happens to you. It's not something that you can adopt. Most people do not have sufficient level of devotion
I was thinking of me.
to really give that. So you're right. I did leave those 2 out, and I left them out intentionally.
Okay.
Anything else from anyone?
So, Brother Shankara, what is Madhura Baba?
It's the attitude that Uma pointed out that I had left out, and it is the Madhura means the sweet, or it's the attitude of a lover or paramour of God, the bride of God, as it is often represented in the Catholic tradition.
And Mirabai. Mira.
Yes.
Mira.
Mirabai was an example of that within the Sri Ramakrishna mentions that it is a rare circumstance, because most people, particularly those living a householder's life, are not able, again, like the jnani, who must devote their entire attention to their path. They really don't have time for an ordinary life. The Madhura Bhava also requires that you give your life over entirely, as Mirabai did,
Yes.
her life to Krishna.
Yeah.
She left, she renounced the life of a princess and became a wandering mendicant and sang these beautiful and very heartfelt and very passionate songs to and about Krishna. So I did not include that bhava, the Madhura Bhava or the Shanta Bhava, because the Shanta Bhava is a somewhat passive way of being. The bhavas that are attitudes that are included in what was spoken of earlier are all active. They're a relationship. There's also the attitude of a friend,
Yes.
which is the attitude of Arjuna to Krishna. For most of us, we would need to be in the presence of the incarnation or the saint for that to be a reality for us. So, anything else from anyone? Those are all.
Yes, Brother Shankara.
Yes, Neera.
This is Neera. I wanted to clarify, what was the name of the bhava that Sri Ramakrishna was when he went from the relative plane of consciousness to the absolute at his will, and then he went back and forth? He was in what bhava was that one?
Well, he transcended all the bhavas, dear. There was no. He lived as a child of the mother. That was his assertion, that he lived as a child and servant of the mother. And so that was the bhava, or bhavas, if you will, that he was living in. But his samadhi transcended all that. Now, if you find in the gospel that he is actually speaking to the Divine Mother, and he often does that audibly so that others are hearing it, he isn't paying any attention, and it's not that it's meant for them. This is not a device he's using. This is a manifestation of that child and servant relationship. And it's very touching, because sometimes he is very plaintive in his and very he both asks of and the mother, and pleads with her for certain things to happen. You can read all about that in the gospel. We won't go into that this morning. Thank you, Neera, for the question.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, Janaki.
you started with a line that I really love and have run across myself. Thou art my heart's beloved, thou and thou alone.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's so when you say that most people can't have a relationship that's lover, I must not understand the difference here.
To have the divine presence as your beloved and to be a lover in the sense of a paramour.
Mm-hmm.
They could be the same, but as I said, the reason it's not brought up here this morning, that paramour way of being, is that most people either could not or would not live that. So it's not a way of meditating for most, and I'm talking about 90 some odd percent of bhaktas. So I was focusing on the great body of bhaktas, first standard deviation from the mean on both sides. Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Shankara, this is Tom.
Yes, Tom.
So is this something that you decide which one you are, or you discover which one you are just by looking at your nature and so on?
Very good question, Tom, and it will come up as we discuss these 5 points that I mentioned. It's something that you really discover. Now, you can decide, and if you decide, you may then later change your mind based on your experience. There are people who set out to say, I am a servant of God. And so everything I do will be, and that's a good stand to take. They may later find that their relationship, as you said, based on their nature, based on their experience, is more one of a child of God. And there's actually stories of this happening among the very senior swamis of the Ramakrishna order. So one can do, as you said, this decision. One can make this decision and then live out that as a stand you're taking. Particularly, this is very much associated with the karma yoga path. Or, as you said, you find this, and of course, this will be the more powerful when you find the relationship in your own nature. Very good, very relevant question. Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara, this is Dennis.
Yes.
Could you give me a working definition of the term bhava?
Yeah, attitude, relationship. Bhava, it's a Sanskrit word that means basically attitude. But it matures into, that attitude matures into a relationship. As Sri Ramakrishna's attitude toward the Divine Mother in the beginning, because he came from another tradition. He came from a tradition of worshiping Rama. And so when he became the priest of the Divine Mother at the Dakshineshwar temple, he really didn't know her in the sense that he knew Rama. So he, of course, took the attitude that I am your servant. And then he began to very intensely ask, who is it I'm serving? Is it a block of stone, or is there a reality behind it? And this is when that attitude of servant matured into a relationship when she revealed herself to
Excellent. Thank you very much.
him. Mm-hmm. Anything else from anyone? This is exactly what we should be doing.
Yes, Brother Shankara.
Yes, Aaron.
I wanted to follow up really quickly because someone brought up the point of loving God as a paramour, and it reminded me of when Sri Ramakrishna worshipped Radha, or excuse me, worshipped Krishna as Radha. And was he able to do that, you think? I mean, like as a bhakta, because of how spiritual?
Absolutely. He actually lived as a woman. He lived and dressed and behaved as a woman. And his male identity was completely effaced. No one could see it. When they saw what he had become, it was a woman. Now, that may not seem possible to us, but Swami Shardananda in The Great Master or The Divine Play asserts that that's what actually happened, and he bases it on the experiences of people who were in Sri Ramakrishna's presence when he made this transformation. Because when he made a decision, and again, Tom's question is so relevant. Did he make the decision, or did it simply become so compelling it was irresistible because of his nature? Whatever it was that he did, he gave himself to it 100%. Nothing was left aside. Whatever he was practicing, it was full out without any reservation or remnant of any prior aspect. Although he might return to that later, return to some prior aspect. At the time that he gave himself over to something like this, living as a woman, that was it.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, Swam.
ultimately that is the purity that leads us there, isn't it? To that level.
Yes, but I want to be careful about the word purity because people have they shy away from that word because they think that it means that you have to scrub yourself with something unpleasant. Purity is something that is natural to our being. It manifests itself as we live away the impurities, as we transform, and the impurities are no longer relevant to what we are transforming into, then purity emerges. Yes, we can do as part of the niyamas, we have our practices for external and internal cleanliness. But this is a practice. It's not the purity itself. The purity itself is pre-existing. It's primordial. And like every other aspect of our divinity, it manifests itself as we do our spiritual practice and uncover it when we unload those aspects of ourselves. And Richard Rohr will, in this quote I will read later, he talks about this very directly. It's not so much that we have to learn things, we have to unlearn things. It's a matter of unloading these habits and ways of being that we've gathered on our journey.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Mhm.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
mentioned the Sanskrit meaning of bhava. As you know, in Sanskrit, it's such a rich language that bhava is not only one particular bhava or attitude. It means emotion, it means mood, and there are at least nine bhavas that are described. And I cannot remember all of them, but they are so interesting. Each one is a bhava, like You said Madhur Bhava,
Yes,
Prem Bhava.
no
Another
doubt, no
one-
doubt, no doubt, Uma. Let's not distract ourselves too much by parsing this too finely.
Okay,
As far as we're concerned here,
yeah,
the translation attitude or mood, if you will,
yeah,
is adequate.
right,
Relationship arises
yeah.
out of the attitude or mood that you offer
Yes,
to
yes.
the divine.
I'm not talking about relationship. Bhava is krodha, means anger, or adbhut, fascination, wonder. And all these are beautifully described in different mythological stories. So I just wanted to bring it up that there are 9 kinds of bhava.
Yes, no doubt there are, dear.
Thank you.
We're just talking about those 3 or perhaps 4 this morning,
Okay.
because we're talking about the way a bhakta goes about it.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anything else before we go ahead? All right. As Tom Carr brought up, is this a decision we make, or is it something that emerges from our nature? Well, it depends on our nature. Some people like to make decisions, live them out, take a stand for something and see how it works out. Other people will simply be content to discover what it is. But whatever it is, the beginning for a bhakta is finding reverence. If you're going to be reverent, it's not an abstract thing for a bhakta. You will be reverent toward something, some aspect of the reality as it presents itself to you. It's not an abstract thing. So the beginning for a bhakta is to find that to which they are truly reverent. Now, many of you have heard me tell the story of Sri Ramakrishna and the farmer with his goat. The farmer had no attraction for and no reverence for any aspect of the divine. Sri Ramakrishna said, well, what do you love? And the farmer said, his goat. And Sri Ramakrishna said, very well, worship your goat. After 3 years, the man came back and said, now I understand that being reverent toward the goat revealed that which he was truly reverent to, which is the self. And that is what it is that we're all truly reverent to, but it presents itself in different forms and aspects. So our first task, as we're beginning this bhakti path, and this is why sometimes a guru is helpful, because we may be indecisive about it. And so the guru will say, well, do this. Because the guru can see deeply into you and see that that will, at least for a start, be appropriate. But if each of us becomes sufficiently introspective, looking inside, we'll find what it is that we truly love and are reverent toward. And that's the beginning. So having found that aspect of reality toward which we're reverent, then we need an appropriate context, tradition, and instruction in how to be worshipful. It's very hard for us to invent it for ourselves. So we look in books, we seek teachers that are associated with that which we are reverent toward. We find context. This is the Shravana part of Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. We hear and are given context for those things that we're reverent. We found ourselves, those aspects and ways of being with that which we're reverent toward. And Uma brought up that there are these wonderful stories, the Puranas and other stories that tell us of the traditions of Sanatana Dharma. But there are many other traditions, many other stories and storytellers, whether it be the Christian tradition, the Toltec tradition of Don Juan Matus. There are many. And so we having decided or having it arise in us what we're reverent toward, we move toward that gives us context for this, makes us feel secure, not alone in doing it. It's very hard to practice alone. This is one of the aspects of the Jnani's path that is difficult. And we receive instruction in how to do it. So we move ahead. And then the next step is becoming established in the practices that we've been taught. And this is where things may mature. We may find, oh, this isn't exactly what I thought it was. And so there's adjustment. But this happens in the predictable and patient and persevering way that we're going about it. So it isn't that you've swallowed something whole and that you're going to stick to that for the rest of your life, no matter what. No. You had a preliminary understanding. That understanding matures and grows. And it quite naturally will become more rather than less. And so your heart, your mind, your being grows to encompass that. And it does. It's wondrous to see how it happens with people. Becoming established in their practice. As I said, because we're talking about the Bhakta's method of meditation, the Bhakta, the devotee, will enter the realm of the heart, as Sri Ramakrishna said. The heart is the drawing room of God. It is the abode of God for the devotee. So they will find their way to their heart. In your heart, however it is that you practice, whatever method of meditation, particular method of meditation you're using, for a bhakta, it's often mantra meditation or visualization or a combination of both. You find there is a great silence within you. There's a great silence. You've sunk below the level of ordinary thinking, ordinary sense experience. You sink into this silence through this continual daily repetition of your practice. As it matures, as it grows, as it changes, but it doesn't vary in the fact that it is every day and it is persistent. Now, when I say every day, obviously, in the lives of every one of us, we'll miss a day now and again. But as your practice progresses, you'll find you miss that day when it doesn't happen, when circumstances force you out of your pattern. You'll find, my day is different because I didn't begin it with my practice. So as you sink into this silence, there is much to be discovered there about the subject that is the center of your reverence, about who you are in relationship to that subject, and about the realm of the kingdom that is within, as Jesus said it. There is a kingdom within that is more splendid, more compelling, more fulfilling in every way than external life. We have this external life because we desire the experience of manyness. Okay, as the divine being, we desire the experience of manyness, but it has its penalty. It's hypnotic and it's limiting. As we turn within and we sink into the silence, we find, this is who wanted this manyness. And it may be that I've had enough of it. The I of I, have had enough of it. And so there is the motivation and the desire to sink even deeper into the silence. And this brings about, quite naturally, transformation in the way that you live and behave. Because you begin to have an understanding that those things and those people that interrupt your silence, that interrupt your experience of this silence, of what is contained in the silence, are no longer useful to you. And so your life will simplify. Your life will become more introverted rather than extroverted, even if you're an extrovert by nature. You'll find it changes. Your extroversion changes and becomes more focused and more intentional rather than casual and careless as it probably was in your younger days. So this happens throughout your journey. It isn't at the end of the journey. That's why it said the journey is itself the goal. This self-discovery, capital S self-discovery, and self-realization goes on for a bhakta because they're accepting it all. Instead of neti-neti, the Bhakta says, asi, asi, this, this. But then they decide over time, which of this, what about this is useful and helpful and desirable to me, and that which is less useful. And so people and practices and habits and ways of being will disappear from your life, not because you've shoved them overboard. You simply left them behind. And that may be a real push-me-pull you at sometimes, particularly with those people that you're emotionally attached to. And there's nothing wrong or harmful in that. So we will do as we need to do as a bhakta. We will do as we need to do to make our practice more and more focused on what we have discovered within, which is like an artesian spring. Once we've removed the cap from the artesian spring and it begins to well up within us and we feel it, that living presence, as Swami Prabhavananda put it. There's no denying it. Its preferability is also undeniable. And so our lives transform bit by bit by focusing on this. This is the meditation. Focusing on this rather than that. Not condemning or judging the that, just saying this is preferable. As Swami Swahananda said, I quoted this earlier, the only true measure of spiritual progress is change in behavior. Why? Because your feelings, your thoughts, your relationship to yourself, and everything that seems to be outside yourself has changed. And so your behavior, your thoughts, your speech, your actions change to be in accord with what you found. So that's the summary of the 5 points. Again, finding reverence, finding context and instruction, personal context and instruction that is relevant to what you've discovered as your subject of reverence. Then becoming established in your practice. Your practice, of course, will include meditation. The meditation will be suited to, but it will be this heart-centered meditation as a bhakta, what you've discovered within your heart, and you sink into that silence that is in your heart, and then transformation. So before I go on and read the concluding quotes, anything about those 5 points from anyone? That for your comment about how you received that? Any question of clarification?
Brother Shankara, this is Steve.
Yes.
Yes, I wanted to ask, and this is something that's been come up for me a number of times in Vedanta, is when we talk about, the preferences and sometimes it's been spoken of in terms of, well, perhaps having less contact with some people, or perhaps, no contact with some people who were previously part of our lives, whether families, friends, whatever.
Yes.
And one of the things that I think myself anyway, well, I can sometimes be very peaceful if I just stay away from certain people. But then I think, well, where am I spiritually if I get so irritated when I'm around the people, And so that's part of the question. And the other part, or the comment, and then the other part is simply, especially with some people, you're very connected because it's not one person, it's a whole interconnected web when you talk about, especially when you talk about family members, so there's one in particular that you may have difficulty with, but to continue the relationship with others, you can't really separate yourself from the one that you have so much difficulty.
Well, Stephen, you bring up a point that is absolutely relevant to practically everyone who practices any kind of spiritual discipline that changes them, because the people in their lives that are used to them being in a certain way don't want them to change. You mentioned those people that you become irritated with. That's not their problem. That's your problem. Irritation is our issue. What is it about them that is irritating me? And why am I yielding to irritation and judgment rather than simply accepting them as they are and either being with them if I must, or avoiding their company if I can? Now, family members, it's a different issue. Family members will try to keep you within what they perceive as their fold, their way of being comfortable with you. And as Sri Ramakrishna said, sometimes you must look on your family as a nest of vipers.
Oh my gosh.
They will strike you when you get too far away from their comfort zone. And so this is why Sri Ramakrishna said, if no other way is possible for you, arrange to spend some time in solitude, away from everyone, not just the people that are creating this tension in your life, but the people you're comfortable with as well. And find in that solitude and silence who you truly are, which is the divine being, the divine presence as we understand it from here. In that solitude, then, you can return to these people on a more centered and solid footing, and not allow their venom or their sweet sugar, they'll offer both, to try and render your relationship that which makes them comfortable. And so a spiritual aspirant of any kind has the integrity to be honest with themselves, to be honest with those who they care about, and those that they no longer wish to have as part of their lives. and they have the courage of self-determination to say, I'm doing this for reasons that I determine are good and proper, because I want to live my life in a way that is spiritually fulfilling. And no one has the right to stop you from that. No one. You may yield, you may compromise, but whatever you do it in full knowledge that that's what you're doing, without irritation or resentment. Does that make sense, Stephen?
Yes, brother, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Brother Shankara,
Yes,
I'm
dear.
so glad we are discussing this, because I had the same question. How do you, like any transition is very difficult for both parties. When one changes spiritually and the other stays the same
Yes.
or on a different path, and they wonder why this person is reacting in a different way. And you wonder why that person is not coming up a little higher. So it's a imbalance situation. And I'm so glad that you mentioned how to deal with it, what to do about it. And it's not easy. Transition
No, it's
is very difficult to deal.
the principles of spiritual life are quite simple. The realization of them in actual practice is anything but easy.
Yes.
Simple and easy are not the same thing.
No.
And this is why it is called tapasya.
Yeah.
Friction.
Yes.
It generates a kind of heat in our lives.
Yeah.
But that is the heat of transformation. You melt the gold before you put it in a new form.
Mm.
And so we experience the heat. And this is why over time, whether we do it willfully or it happens more subtly, less visibly, spontaneously, it will happen. We will grow spiritually, even if we're not trying to. All the scriptural injunctions are such. Anyone else?
I think that it's important to say or realize that when we're talking about personal relationships, especially family, what do we want from them? We want to be loved, and we often want that love to take a particular form called approval.
Mm-hmm.
And when we start to change, and our family doesn't like that, because humans in general don't like things to change, especially their family members, they, do whatever it is those family members and friends do to try to stop you from changing. And it is hard to deal with, but from my own experience dealing with two family members, but especially one that was so hard, I had to get myself genuinely to the point where I didn't need to be special to them anymore. And because I felt like, if you don't approve of me, you must not think I'm your special whatever family member. You must not love me. That makes me sad, which makes me irritable, which makes me angry, which makes me push back. And nobody who's trying to change you or get you to stop changing can get anywhere with it unless you push back. If you don't push back, there's nothing to feed their anxiety about and their desire, and therefore their desire to change you. So it's, with this one person in particular, I mean, it happened over a period of a number of years, but I had to just be loving and avoid certain topics, but just not need the approval, and love that person as, consciousness in a family member suit. And again, it's not easy, but it really did get to that point. And now that person, and I wasn't trying to get her to do this, but now she is very loving toward me because I stopped pushing back when she would try to mess with me. Anyway, that's it.
Oh, very, very well said. Very well said, Sharna.
Hey, this is Tom. Can you hear me?
Yeah, of course.
So last night I watched a documentary on Mr. Rogers.
Uh-huh.
Some of what Cindy just said is almost word for word what Mr. Rogers has to say. I'm currently thinking of Mr. Rogers as being one of my major spiritual teachers.
Isn't he wonderful?
He's just
Absolutely.
wonderful. And but one of the things he's trying to communicate to children, he said, is that you don't have to do anything special to be lovable. You deserve to be loved just the way you are.
Mm-hmm.
And he sees that as one of the major problems in our culture, that we feel that we have to do some extraordinary thing, and it's fine if you can do some extraordinary thing, but most people can't, and or it doesn't show up. But that you just deserve to be loved. You're lovable just the way you are. So that's my thought for the day. Thank you.
There is a film about Mr. Rogers called, I think it's called A Beautiful Neighborhood, starring Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
You might want to watch that also, Tom.
I saw it. I saw it too.
You saw it too? Good.
Yeah, that's what got me interested enough to get the documentary.
Yeah, he's a phenomenon, Mr. Rogers, and is a great spiritual teacher. In the most, talk about an unusual way, this little children's show that he had.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Tom. That was very, very relevant.
Sure.
Brother Shankar?
Yes, Bhagirath.
See, in the last part, we are almost entering a quicksand that you can easily sink to it and there is no clear answer. And of course, you are reaching the end of the whole thing, and this requires entirely a separate discussion, but it depends upon how you describe love, how you define love. To me, love means to allow a person to be what he wants to be is called love. While our definition of love is to mold the person to be the way we want him to be molded. If you make a mistake, life is absolutely amenable to make mistakes. Go ahead and make mistakes. There is nothing wrong in it. But that's not the way. This is the reason why the family structure is good as a fence work, that it will hold the cattle on one side of the fence. But if the cattle wants to be a free-gazing entity, then the family say, no, then you are not ours. So these are the kind of questions. It is so easy to discuss in a Vedantic sense. But when it comes to a practical sense, the kind of person Cindy described is not only the one person. They are everywhere, all around us.
Yes.
Call them husband, call them wife, call them children, call them guru, call them teacher, call them society, whatever name you want to give. But everyone wants to mold you the way he thinks, while the real word is from bhava to swabhava. And that swabhava is rarely discussed. Swabhava means this is your nature. This is the way you feel. This is the way you are entitled to pursue, right or wrong, until you come to your own definite conclusions. That's the way I feel.
Well, Bhagirath, thank you very much. And you started this discussion, your part of the discussion, with the very most important point, and that is that true love is open-handed and uncontrolling. There is no possessiveness. There is no there is no control. As Vivekananda said, where there is fear, there is no love. Where there is love, there is no fear. And if someone is trying to make you fear their loss of their relationship or their support or whatever it is, then it's not really love, it's possessiveness. They're trying to control something so that they are more comfortable. True love, and of course it's so very hard to practice,
Yes.
is unpossessive and unconditional. I love you not because or in spite of. I simply love you because that is how it is. With that, I'll read these last two quotes. And as you'll see, it is very relevant. The first is the full quote that I paraphrased earlier of Father Richard Rohr. Loving the presence in the present. And this is something that he published in December of 2015. It starts with a quote from Fyodor Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov. So this is from Dostoevsky, starts with this quote. Love people even in their sin, for that is the semblance of divine love and is the highest love on earth. Love all of God's creation, the whole and every grain of sand of it. Love every leaf, every ray of God's light. Love the animals, love the plants, love everything. If you love everything, you will perceive the divine mystery in things. If you love everything, you will perceive the divine mystery in things. Once you perceive it, you will begin to comprehend it better every day. And you will come at last to love the whole world with an all-embracing love. That's from Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov.
Wow.
Father Rohr comments, we cannot attain the presence of God because we're already in the presence of God. I'm going to repeat that. He starts with this absolutely essential point. We cannot attain the presence of God because we're already in the presence of God. What's absent is awareness. Little do we realize that God's love is maintaining us in existence with every breath we take. As we take another breath, it means that God is choosing us now and now and now. We have nothing to attain or even learn. We do, however, need to unlearn some things. To become aware of God's loving presence in our lives, we have to accept that human culture is in a mass hypnotic trance. We're sleepwalkers. All great religious teachers have recognized that we human beings do not naturally see. We have to unlearn our blindness. Prayer is not primarily saying words or thinking thoughts. It is rather a stance. It is a way of living in the presence, living in the awareness of the presence, and even of enjoying the presence. Within Sanatana Dharma, that's called reveling in the self. And even of enjoying the presence. The contemplative is most aware of God's loving presence, but trusts. The contemplative is not just aware of God. Let me start again. The contemplative is not just aware of God's loving presence, but trusts, allows, and delights in it. All spiritual disciplines have one purpose: to get rid of illusions so we can be present. These disciplines exist so that we can see what is, see who we are, and see what is happening. What is love? It is God who is love, giving away God every moment as the reality of our life. Who we are is love, because we are created in God's image. What is happening is God's living in us, with us, and through us as love. Now, as often happens, I'll leave the last word to Swami Vivekananda. This is from a lecture he offered in 1899 at the Home of Truth in Los Angeles. I mention the time and place because we see that this is near the end of Swamiji's life, just toward the end. He only lived another 2.5 years. Not even quite that. So this is part of his summum bonum, his greatest expression of truth. The greatest help to spiritual life is meditation. In meditation, we divest ourselves of all material conditions and feel our divine nature. We do not depend upon any external help in meditation. The touch of the soul can paint the brightest color even in the dingiest places. Mm-hmm. It can cast a fragrance over the vilest thing. It can make the wicked divine, and all enmity and selfishness is effaced. The less the thought of the body, the better. For it is the body that draws us down. It is attachment, identification, which makes us miserable. That is the secret, to think that I am the spirit and not the body, and that the whole of this universe, with all its relations, with all its good and all its evil, is but as a series of paintings, scenes on a canvas of which I am the witness. So that concludes the presentation. Is there anything else from anyone about what's been said? Your reaction, any lingering question, anything at all?
Shankara?
Yes.
I just wanted to say I'm relieved that we've switched from Jnani Yoga to Bhakti Yoga.
Yes, thank you, Janaki. Yes, it, we do need to take up jnana yoga because there are aspects of it that are important to each of the spiritual paths, particularly the discrimination and ability to release, the discrimination between what is good and what is pleasant, what is real and unreal according to that definition. But the Bhakta's path is a more enjoyable one to talk about and enjoy.
Brother Shankar,
Yes, dear.
by nature, human beings are either lumpers or splitters. So basically, if you want to split, you can keep on splitting until you lump everything together. So all these 4 yogas, if you know how to split at the right level and pick up the right portion to the right proportion in your life, in that case, you do not have to choose one yoga or the other, but to exercise 4 of them in a very equilateral fashion, in a judicious fashion, is perhaps the greatest challenge, because we can escape from our weaknesses by choosing one path and excluding the other.
Thank you, Bhagirath. As Vivekananda said, by work or by worship, by psychic control or philosophy, one or more are all of these, and be free. Anything else from anyone? All right, dears. Well,
So,
this
Brother
is,
Shankar, hey, Brother
yes,
Shankar, this is Gopinder.
yes, Gopinder.
Just a thought crossed my mind actually about the last statement. I think earlier I saw Sister Cindy. She had musical instruments lined up on her walls. So I can't see the guitar. So, ukulele has 4 strings in it, and each string has to be tuned or tightened up just enough so that all 4 strings together can make a beautiful sound.
Harmony. Yes, yes.
Yes.
So that's a 4 yogas or 4 paths are for, you can't, I mean, of course, in the isolation also they make their notes, but when they properly tune all 4 of them and then strike them
Gopinder,
together.
what a marvelous metaphor.
Yes, symphony.
What a marvelous metaphor. That's wonderful. And we can extend that then to a choir, soprano, alto, tenor, and bass.
Yeah.
So this is wonderful. What a beautiful. It's always good to bring in a musical metaphor, and there are there are many 6-stringed instruments in Cindy's
Oh
house.
yeah. See, I was thinking of guitar because myself play guitar. So, I mean, but then ukulele has 4 strings, so it's more
Well,
appropriate.
there are actually more than the 4 yogas. It's just that the 4
Oh.
were those that Vivekananda brought to us and defined for us. So those are the ones that we study. So thank you, Gopinder. That was beautiful. Anything else from anyone? All right. Let there be peace in outer space. Let there be peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. Let there be peace in the herbs, the plants, and the trees. May the gods be peaceful. May the whole universe be pervaded by peace. Let this infinite universal peace prevail throughout my being. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. And our final salutation and farewell. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. May you have peace of mind. May you go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being. So until the next time we meet, this has been glorious to be with you. And so we'll take it up from there the next time we see one another.
Brother Shankara,
Thank you.
truly glorious.
Thank you.
All right, you all. And away we go.